Hello, everyone. To those just tuning in, welcome. To those who have been checking out sessions throughout the day, welcome back. We hope you're enjoying the content and are looking forward to more awesome presentations coming up later on. A quick reminder to join our Slack channel to interact with other attendees and join selected speakers for Q&A after their presentations. You can find the link in the menu at the top of this page. Happy viewing.
Hey everyone, thank you and welcome to my talk today, which I've labeled a growth mindset. Essentially, this is the B2B SaaS Future Festival, and I'm really honored to be here. So let's get the show started. I have to admit, this is my first time doing a session, virtual session like this. Pressing times, different stuff are changing, but I'll try to make it seem pretty lively, and I'll try to make sure that you feel like you could have been next to me in a room. That's always going to make it more enjoyable for everyone. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, first of all, my name is Casper. Casper Walkman. I am the head of growth at Templify. Templify, I'll talk about that in a sec, but Templify is a template management solution from Copenhagen. I've been with Templify for almost 3 years now. I used to be handling all our social media presence paid-wise, so all our paid acquisition, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google Ads, all that stuff. I like to call myself a bit of a self-declared expert on paid advertising, and I think I still am. I'm a huge nerd. I love inbound marketing, superheroes, esports, chess, all that stuff. Whenever there's strategy and nerdery, then I'm part of it. I have a little kid, which hopefully will not disturb us today, but let's see. And I also am married to a beautiful lady. Love to use emojis, and you'll probably see some during this presentation today. So yeah, let's get started. What I'm going to take you through today is a bit, going to give you a little intro, a little context, just to make sure everyone's on the same level. Then we're going to talk a little bit about metrics that actually matter. I feel like this is a topic that is not covered enough and is not covered in the right way. Let's put it that way. Then I'm going to show a little case of how some of the stuff I've done at Templify, just again to further prove the points I'm trying to make. And lastly, I'm going to give it a little bit of a lightning round just to make sure that you get some of my findings. Of course, there's a disclaimer. There's a bunch of stuff I can't cover today. I would love to cover more about process, and maybe I'll do that in a future talk. But today I want to talk a little bit more about the mindset and give you some of the most important things you want to be thinking about when you're starting your growth journey. Okay. Lastly, the goal for today is kind of simple for me. I just want to share the things that I would love for someone to have told me when I started out doing these things. Like if somebody have told me some of the things I'm showing you today, I probably wouldn't have made that many mistakes. Okay, let's move on. So a little step back on the journey road. My growth journey starts about, I am 29 years old, almost 30, big 30 coming up. So my growth journey starts about 10 years ago. I used to work in sales, and I used to be a phone salesman in the back old day when we were still selling newspapers through the phone. I did that for 7 years. I was working cold calls and did like my whole journey there. The thing about that is that it's super, super useful. Why is it useful? It's useful because it gets you into the right mindset. So working phone calls and doing cold calls and being like a salesman in general, and being like, let's be real here, full transparency. This was the roughest part of sales you could be in. Like this was hardcore cold calling. There's no cheeky mama helping you out here. This was hardcore. So I did that for 7 years, and it learned me, like I tracked, and I did a little test, and I found that I spoke approximately, I called at least and spoke with almost 100,000 people in Denmark. What that does to you is that it gives you a really good idea of what people want. How do people react to why you communicate with people? Why is this important? We'll move on with later on, but you'll get the idea. This is how I think. So I like to say that when people are working as a growth hacker or in marketing in general, if you never actually tried to sell to anyone, how do you know that your ad specifically works? Of course, yes, you can see in your data, but the first time you do an ad, you don't have this gut feeling of this is going to sell. This is going to work because I've talked to 100,000 people before, and I know that if I sell to Betty, she's going to trigger on these words. that gut feeling is something that takes years of experience to get to. And that's really powerful, and you get that from sales. So I like to say that's a creative marketing and psychology package of me. That's where I get this from. And this is like what contributes and how you understand growth hacking. I have my parents, they have worked in marketing my whole life. Marketing in high school, I've done marketing for, I don't even remember, quite long. And I've always been a kid that played World of Warcraft and games. So back in the day when you played World of Warcraft the first time, there was barely a thing called Google. You had to solve the things by doing and not just by Googling. So you had to figure out ways to do this yourself. So this software engineering automation approach to everything that comes from this deep-rooted feeling of like, I have an issue, I have to solve it somehow. I'm super creative. And at the same time, when I joined Templify, I got the last leg of becoming, in my opinion, a growth hacker and effective at understanding growth. And I started to understand what metrics, which is what we're talking about, but data analytics and testing, which is the last part of it. And this is a big contribution to my bosses at Templify. That was kind of the last leg I was missing. Okay. Little talk about this. Like, why is growth hacking different, and why is a head of growth different than a growth hacker? That's a very important distinction. So first of all, everyone does growth. Absolutely, everyone does growth, and if you go into a company and say they don't do growth, then they're probably not going to get the next promotion. Everyone does growth. Growing revenue profits is at the core of what you do as a business, and every function is technically responsible for pursuit of this goal. The deep understanding you should have is that the head of growth, or typically also a growth hacker, it focuses on this exclusively. It means that this person does this by viewing departments as integrated functions. A good example is to look at traditional marketing, where traditional marketing is typically focused on awareness and acquisition. We need to get the product out so we can get some leads that can end up in the pipeline and become customers. That's traditional marketing. And traditional marketing aspects go, we made this beautiful campaign, why are you not selling it? In a head of growth role, I'd be like, we sold these products, how can we backtrack that to everything we did? How can we optimize the different departments and different things we're doing in order to achieve more growth? Where are the growth levers we can pursue? So in essence, growth functions across all parts of the funnel. Typically, I like Neil Patel. He framed growth hacker as a growth hacker, someone who's analytical, inexpensive, creative, innovative ways to exponentially grow their company's customer base. Whereas head of growth is a more holistic view, where you say a person whose true north is growth. Everything they do is scrutinized by its potential impact on scalable growth. It's Sean Ellis. And essentially what the differentiation between them is, a growth hacker is something on the ground, very low to the ground. A growth head of growth is more running operations, running teams, running ideation processes and stuff like that. Okay. Enough about that. I hope you get the context. Little short, I have one slide here about Templify. I just want to make sure that before I tell you the stuff I'm going to show, I just want to make sure you know where I'm coming from. So essentially, Templify solves a problem called document anarchy. Every day, employees produce thousands of documents, presentations, and emails, but they don't always use the latest company standards. That is what we call document anarchy. It's a big problem out there. So large corporations, imagine this case, you have to change your new logo. How do you get that out to 50,000 new people? The first thing they're all going to do is going to go to Google and Google, hey, what's our new logo, right? That's a big deal. So typically what we deal with is we deal with a target audience of saying we are best with enterprises with above 500 employees, and we target senior marketing employees, especially brand managers, because they have the pain. Those are the people where they can really feel that they don't have a tool to solve this issue for them. At the same time, we look for senior IT employees, with the keywords being digital transformation, CISOs and stuff like that. Typically, these people are tasked with carrying out digital transformation for their companies, taking large organizations into the cloud, into the future, and Templify is a big part of that. Lastly, something I haven't included here, but maybe it's something to think of, and it's also something we could talk about afterwards and on Twitter or whatever, if you feel like talking with me about this, is how Templify has also been it's been really interesting to be a part of during this whole Corona COVID-19 crisis, mainly due to the fact that there's been Templify is a really good product for actually working from home. You have access to all your assets, and suddenly that means that a lot of companies actually Some cases have sped up, like they've been running faster, whereas other cases have been running slower for us because of the crisis. Interesting aspect. Anyways, last model before we get to something a little bit more cool, maybe. This, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, this is the only model you'll ever need if you're in growth marketing, if you work with marketing, growth marketing related. It's the old school. It's called the AIDA model. There's a bunch of different versions out there. I'm not gonna hawk you through all the different versions. I'll keep it simple. Essentially, awareness, interest, decision, action. It's super simple. My point of this is saying there's when people start out doing marketing or start out doing growth, they always have a tendency when I hear them to start out at the top. So they go like, hey, I just want to do some Facebook ads and they're going to be great. I'm going to shoot them out to a bunch of people and I'm going to see what happens. That is a fine approach if you want to test your MVP or just want to get some feedback. That's fine. But why don't you focus on initially when you only have, let's say you have $10,000 for your first campaign and that's your entire marketing budget for a year. Why do you want to focus on putting people through a big funnel? What you want to focus on is taking the people who are actively looking for a solution that your problem solves, that your product solves. Essentially, a good example of this is saying the people who search for template management software for a large enterprise, maybe let's say they search for that, which happens, let's say that happens once a year or something like that. So not typically that often, but once in a while. That person, he's ready to buy your system. He's ready to buy Templify. There might not just be one of them, but he's in the action phase, decision phase, or might slightly, let's say he's an interest phase. So he's just like, he's searching for PowerPoint online. Then he's already showing some interest in the field. He doesn't really know what it is. And here, organic efforts and Google Ads become way more interesting as a proving model for saying, does what I'm trying to sell, does it have legs? Is anyone searching for this? Is anyone looking for this? And the thing is, with Templify, ours are typically, like this used to be a lot longer in the past. Typically, our sales cycle used to be around 4 to 6 months. It's closer to less than 4 months today. However, if you're scraping by and you want to be sure to get your quota, then you don't want to get the people who are taking 6 months plus to convert. You want to get the people who are ready to convert within 2 to 3 months. Yes, they might be more expensive initially, but first of all, the first thing you want to do is want to prove that you have a reason to exist. Let's move on. So let's talk about metrics. I love metrics, but let's ask a really I don't want to call it condescending, but let's ask a question on why does marketing exist? I know it's a joke, but let's be honest. Why does marketing exist? Very simply put, marketing exists because we need to make sales. We need to close customers and we need to generate revenue. That's why we exist. We don't exist to create beautiful banners. We don't create blah, blah, blah. We are here for the same reason as sales are, here to generate customers. The end. Now, then, can somebody explain me? Again, this is a rhetorical question. I'm being a little bit hyperbolical. I'm sorry about that. But why are people focusing on the wrong metrics? Then, essentially what happens today, in my opinion, is that people are focusing on what I'd like to call vanity metrics. What good example of a vanity metric is saying, hey, Casper, I've just made this beautiful social post and it got 1,000 likes on LinkedIn. Okay, beautiful. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad job, but how do we tie that directly into revenue? Do we do that? Yeah, but Casper, I got 500,000 followers in the last month on LinkedIn. While that, first of all, that's would be crazy, but I'm not against that necessarily. But is that the metric that matters? Did those 500,000 people you generate as followers, have they generated revenue? Do you have a plan for making them generate revenue? No, you don't. So stop focusing on these metrics that don't really matter. A good example I always use is the video example. I'd rather have a video that's seen by 100 people, but the 100 people have seen it for at least 50% of the video period, especially if it's like, let's say it's long form. As to, let's say you have a video that's seen by 1,000 people, but that's just the engagement time is lower this than 2 seconds. What does it matter if 1,000 people have seen my video for 3 seconds? They're not going to understand Templafy in 3 seconds, no hard feelings, but they're really not. So that's not a metric that matters. So view and reach can typically be a metric that does not matter. I'm not saying all metrics are bad, but you have to find the way to the metric that matters to you. And sometimes, this is crazy, but a lot of people talk about cost per click and cost per lead. I don't give a sorry, profanity. I don't give much about cost per click. What does cost per click tell you? It just tells you how much it costs for people to land it. It doesn't tell you how much you converted. And I'll show you how I would do it instead. So let's give a good example here. So this is some of our old Google Ads data, and I've just pulled this up just to prove a point. So let's say if you look at cost per conversion, it could be high, it can be high. Maybe it's, I see it looks quite clear on my screen, so sorry if it's a bit blurry on yours. But essentially, my point is here. Let's look at the column that says cost per conversion. This is essentially how much does it cost to generate a lead, in our case, a person who signs up for a demo for Templafy. Then let's say the one I'm highlighted here, it's in kroners, but that would amount to approximately €1 or $1. That's pretty cheap. So $1 to get a cost per conversion. Great, right? That's awesome. Then you go to the left, and then you see that somebody searched for easy handyman estimates created templates, or he searched for driver's license template software. Now, unless you didn't hear in the beginning, that's definitely not what we do at Templafy. At Templafy, we make a template management solution for big enterprises. These people are searching for small-time solutions for them. Needless to say, while the landing page of us might have confused these people as to why did they even convert in the first place, that's a different discussion. But the interesting part is here is saying this doesn't tell us if this became a customer. This doesn't tell us anything about what happened after the lead came in. So the problem arises here that if you go by following the data you get from here, in this case, Google Ads, and then you'd say to Google, hey, I just want you to optimize for the lowest cost per conversion. Then what Google is going to do is going to say, okay, all these easy handyman estimates created template searches, those are great. I should try to get more of those, more of these people. And that's the wrong way of doing it. A lot of talking, right? So how do we apply this? If we know this now we know that this is not how we should be treating our metrics, then how do we apply this to the real world? Well, first of all, I wanted to introduce you to a simple concept that's been invented by Sean Ellis, and then I'll show you the metric part of it. First of all, you want to start with what I call the North Star metric. This is defined by Sean Ellis. He wrote a brilliant book on it. Read it. He's a great guy. I like him a lot. But essentially, the North Star metric is a name for one metric that matters. This metric is the one that everyone in the organization can get behind. It's a specific metric that best captures the core value that your product is trying to deliver to customers. If you focus on this metric and try to optimize it company-wide, you'll improve your North Star metric, and that will be the key to driving what I call the sustainable growth in the long term. Good examples I pull up here. Facebook has daily active users. I'm not positive they still have that, but they used to at least. Airbnb have number of nights booked. Quora has number of questions a user answers, average records created per account, engaged cloud subscribers. Now, the thing about this is North Star metrics, I have a bit of a caveat for these. And the reason I bring them up is that it's a bit of a twofold relationship with them. So first of all, I think it's brilliant as an organization to reach a point where you can define a North Star metric. A North Star metric, however, is not the first thing you should go out and do, which is why I've included it here. The North Star metric, let's say you are a 10-man entrepreneurial shop, you just open up, or you start in a new project maybe in an organization that's a little bit bigger, 20, 30, maybe 50 people. Then the North Star metric, first of all, you might not have a North Star metric yet. It might not be like very crystal clear what your North Star metric should be. Secondly, this can be very hard to track initially. And initially, what you want to make sure is just to generate revenue. So for a large part of Templafy's existence, our North Star metric has been MRR, monthly recurring revenue. For generating monthly recurring revenue, then we're doing quite well. Then eventually we moved it over to saying also daily active users, just as Facebook, but it has been a bit in between, and it's kind of my point with this is just saying it's not crystal clear where the shift happens, but my best guesstimate is to say North Star metric is not something you should focus on if you're less than 50 employees. Then to me, it does not make that much sense. North Star metric makes a lot more sense the bigger you get, because then it suddenly becomes, okay, this is something everybody in an organization can work towards. If you're great on doing it when you're 5 people, by all means, go ahead. But that's not where you should start. Okay, let's take this one as a really good example of the previous talk we had. So typical in a marketing organization, this data, just want to point out, this data is 2 years old or something. So don't worry too much about the numbers. This is not about the numbers. This data is about what happens when you look at data. So I've even fixed it so it doesn't really show the real data. It's just to give you an idea. But this is somewhat true. Okay, so first of all, this is showing the number of qualified and unqualified leads for a channel. That means we have a pretty narrow targeting. So we say like this is a qualified leads, pretty hard to be a qualified lead in Templafy. Okay, if you look at this slide only, you would be like, okay, LinkedIn looks like a great channel. From LinkedIn, we got 12 qualified leads per week. That's great. That's better than what we get from AdWords, where we only get 6 qualified leads per week, or better than from what we get from Facebook, right? So typically, if you only look at this level, which is what your agency does. So if you use an agency for marketing activities, this is the level they look at, typically, unless you told them otherwise, of course. This is the level they look at, and this is where it's so wrong. This will not tell you anything about the customer's value. So let's try to dig a little bit deeper. So sometimes if you get to a better agency, this is what they're talking about. Or maybe you get to you're a marketing professional, and this is what you've been taught mattered for a long time. You could look at cost per qualified lead. And here you can see, okay, this is in DKK and kroners, but doesn't really matter to the point. But let's say you pay 10,000 kroners for a qualified lead from LinkedIn. You're paying 11,000. Your graphs are a bit off, but don't mind that too much. You're paying 11,000 for a lead on AdWords, and you're paying 7,000 for a qualified lead on Facebook. If you'll only look at this, then suddenly, okay, Facebook is suddenly the good one. Like here, we're only paying 7,500 for a qualified lead. That's great, right? That's where we want to be. But again, it does not tell you anything about what happens afterwards. So the point I'm trying to make is this is where you want to get to. You want to get to a point where you can say, how much does it cost for me to achieve 1 kroner or €1, $1 of opportunity monthly recurring revenue? Essentially, what I'm saying with this slide is saying it costs me about 4.4 kroners to achieve 1 kroner opportunity MRR. Because of now, okay, if you just look at it like that, it would be like, that's a bad deal, Casper. It seems like an awful deal. First of all, you have to remember that once you close a deal, so it's even lower to closed one, actually, which is interesting. But let's say this, once we're in, for Templafy's phase, so once we're in the opportunity phase, they're pretty close to closing. Okay. Secondly, then there's also when we sign contracts, we sign them for a long period. So the actual real value is 1 times a multitude, right? So the value is definitely there. So what you want to get to this point, because now you can actually evaluate how much it costs you to achieve MRR. And if you look at it here, in this case, from this particular week, it looks like Facebook, and this, of course, you have to be not just on it. This is a weekly report, and just to give you an idea. So you shouldn't take it with a grain of salt. But the point being is here you can actually see that Facebook is the one that gets you most bang for your buck. Whenever I cast money into Facebook, I have to cast 2.0 kroners in to get 1 kroner opportunity MRR, which is a great deal. Okay. So now you know what to do when you want to optimize towards real value. So let's give you a good example of how you do this in the real world. How do we apply this mentality? So let me show this, and this is a bit of a bonus hack. I like to include hacks in my presentations typically. This makes them a bit more lively. Don't want to call this a hack, but it's a pretty cool thing very few people know, or fewer than they should. Okay, so Google Ads has something called a G-clit. God, I should take that out. It's called a G-clit. I did not make up that name. It's called a G-clit. It's essentially Google's unique identifier for every time you click an ad. So when you click Google Ads ad, or like in the search bar, you click it, then it will be a gclid or a unique identifier attached to you. So what we did is essentially this. So we made a hidden field on, let me actually go back a bit. Yeah. So we made a hidden field in our HubSpot forms that collects this gclid whenever somebody comes in. You can't see this field. You can't see that we're picking up client ID, the gclid, but it's picked up. Where does this matter? This matters here on the next slide. So typically what the flow difference that happens from this is this. So normally you would have Google Ads that would send people to templafy.com. You can see our page here. And that would send data up to Google Analytics. And then it would, if they converted, that would send the data into Salesforce and HubSpot or marketing automation and our CRM systems. Normal, typical stuff. The thing is, there's no talk between Google Ads and Salesforce and HubSpot. These guys don't talk together. They're integrated, but trust me, they really don't talk that much. So what you want to do is essentially add this parameter where you pick it up, and then you want to feed this information back to Google Ads. So now you start optimizing for what actually converts. So instead of optimizing towards handyman templates or the thing we covered earlier, you're now optimizing towards the things that actually matter. So let's say somebody becomes a close won customer or becomes an opportunity because like you're maybe not closing that many customers, so there's a lack of data there. Let's say the ones that are very close to closing or getting close to it. You optimize towards those people in your Google Ads. So you say to Google, hey Google, I want you to find more of these types of people based on searches. That's where you get the real value and you make a huge difference. That was one of the best hacks we ever did, by the way. Okay, I like to include this quote, one accurate measurement is worth 1,000 expert opinions. My point is, if you do the above that I've showed you here in terms of metrics, it's gonna allow you to become, to talk better with this guy. And a rhetorical question, does anyone know who this is? Probably not. It's a bit of a joke. I'm trying to be funny here. It's a CFO of your company. The CFO of your company. The CFO should be your best friend. It's really easy to go up by the end of the year to go to your CFO and just go, hey bro, here's the thing. Marketing generated X amount of revenue last year, whereas outbound activities or other activities only generated this amount of revenue. I want more budget. That conversation is so much easier than going up to your CFO and saying, hey, we spent $100,000 on this campaign. We don't really know what happened, but we think it got traction. That conversation is so much easier now. Right. I'm going to quickly, I'm running up. I'm actually talking more than I imagined on this thing, so it's really good. But I'm going to jump through this a little bit quicker than normal, or I would normally do. But it's just to illustrate a point. So we did a test back in the day with LinkedIn, and I want to show how I evaluated if it was a success and how I made it work for us. So essentially, what you want to understand is the basics first. There's something called a lead gen form. In case you're not aware, a lead gen form is essentially a form that's auto-filled, filled with pre-filled with information based on their profile. On LinkedIn, this is typically very, very good because the information on people's LinkedIns is like super good. It's very on point. The thing about the lead gen forms is also that they're very frictionless. The reason you typically find that lead gen forms provides a lot more conversions than landing page conversion is because there's a lot less friction. You can easily imagine that somebody has to go to your site to convert instead of just clicking 2 buttons to essentially convert. That's a lot easier to do. The thing about lead gen forms is there's a catch. First of all, one does not simply convert a lead from LinkedIn. But first of all, knowledge about your product is limited, to say the least. So some of the feedback we got was like, hey, this sounded interesting, but I don't really know what Templafy is about. It makes total sense, right? Like people haven't really seen Templafy, they haven't seen our website. What are they signing up for? Secondly, there's low commitment. We got a comment like, I don't know what I clicked on. I just wanted to check it out for myself. So essentially what happened was that our lead to opportunity conversion rate from lead ads was dropping. It was dropping hard. And this is a little bit of an old case, but I think it's really interesting. So by the end of January 2018, it was less than 10%. Okay, I had an idea. I had many, but this was the best one. What if we could personalize our approach and educate the leads before they essentially reached a sales rep? So what you wanted to do was you wanted to make sure that these people got more nurtured. we wanted them to understand the product. Because the lead part of it, like saying how cheap leads we could get, that was good. That was really working. That's the good part about using lead gen forms, and especially on LinkedIn. The bad part was the nurture part. So we needed to fix that. So I set up a test and used a bunch of tools. First of all, you need a bunch of tools. LinkedIn, Facebook, we use Drift and 23 for Drift as our chat platform, 23 as our video hub, Zapier to connect it all together. We use HubSpot as our marketing automation, and we use Salesforce. We used Pardot when this was Pardot as our marketing automation back in the day, but today we use HubSpot instead. Okay, second, want to make lead ads, and without video, it doesn't really matter. You can make lead ads. We haven't had really good tests with video, but some people do. It's up to you. Quite simple and nothing spectacular here. Now, step 3 is you want to embed your emails with video. So what the first thing that happens is that when somebody signs up through your lead gen form, you want to send them an email and you want to make them as personal as possible.
Hi, I'm Danny, one of the product specialists here at Amplify. Thanks so much for signing up. Know more about how we work with IT professionals like you.
Now, if you were just signed up for something and half an hour, I think it's half an hour to an hour later, you get an email like that from Danny, that's pretty good, right? Like you'd be like, that seems personal. He shot it on his phone. Like it would be personal, right? The thing about it is not personal. So first we constructed personal emails. So the first email they get is this sign up. This is more like it functions more as a recognition of signing up. The first email is like, hey, blah, blah, blah. Here you can sign up. Here you can go to my Drift, book a call, blah, 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 all this stuff. Pretty basic. The second and the third email, here we remove all HTML. So we make it seem really personal. At the same time, we include a link to a video and we include a link to, and we try to chat it up like Danny normally would. Lastly, the next step is actually segmentizing this. So we do segmentation based on data and then we make the flow. So essentially what happens is you come in, because the data from LinkedIn is so good, like it's really, really good. I often joke about the fact that if people if they change jobs, the first one to tell is LinkedIn, not their mother, right? Like it's the data on LinkedIn is pretty solid. Okay. So what we did was essentially based on the criteria we got in from LinkedIn, we segmented out. So, hey, first we did it. Are you a marketing profile? Are you in this type of specific job title? If your specific job title is what, X, Y, Z. There's a bunch of different flows just like this. And then it also separates it into geolocation. So if you're in from this different location, then you get to be included in this flow for this rep. It's pretty basic, normal stuff. But when you build this the first time, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And we made personal Drift bots. So we made, that's the thing I love about Drift, is that we can make these personal bots that felt like assistants for our reps. So the goal was always to create this flow where they would get nurture and that reps didn't have to do much themselves. So we did that. You can see Carolina, Bianca here in this case. And here you can see a good example of somebody coming into a template bot. So, hey there, I'm Danny's personal assistant, and then you can pick a time. And then you can essentially book yourself in. Lastly, if you're not today, a few things have changed since then, but back in the day, I used Zapier to tie it all together. You can tie it together. If you use HubSpot, you can tie it in together alone based on that. But Zapier is definitely my go-to tool for doing stuff like this. So the question is, what came out of this? Some really, really cool stuff. Really, really cool stuff. So let's try and do the responses themselves. So, hey, Danny, thanks for your note. We want to schedule a time to hear your pitch. Let me know if any blah, blah, to discuss and I'll coordinate with my team. Hey, Danny, I'll try to connect with you next week. Awesome. Hey, sorry for not getting back sooner, blah, blah, blah. Really cool stuff. This was from automated, generated emails that there was no touch from, and the person like responding back to him did not feel that these were automated at all. Secondly, and this is where I had a bit of a eureka moment, not gonna lie, a little bit of a eureka moment is here where people would come into the Drift bots and they would book themselves in. So, hey, sounds good. You can grab a time on Jacob's calendar, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking forward to talking with you and filling information. When you get to that point, you feel like a little mastermind. Like this is like the smartest person in the know kind of joking, but it's really powerful. So what happened? there was a high play rate on the video. So based on the 23, like our video platform here, we could actually see that people were watching these videos. They were really watching them. Now, of course, they were short, but they were watching all of them. It's really awesome. Lastly, did this work in terms of the things that mattered, like in terms of the metrics? Oh, yes. We had a 150% increase in booked meetings from LinkedIn, and we had a 43% drop in cost per opportunity after a booked meeting. Also, by moving our activities to lead forms, which was the whole idea initially, that alone decreased our cost per qualified lead by 55%. So yes, this was a really good case, and it was a case of saying, how do we make this work for us, and at the same time focusing on the metrics that actually matter to us. Lastly, I have this little bit of lightning round. I don't have a lot of time left, so I'm gonna keep it short. But this is more like some of the things I wish someone would have told me earlier. First of all, this is so cliche, and I hate to do this, but it's really true. So first of all, do things that don't scale. And what do you mean with that? Find things that work before you think about the scalability of these things. Do you want to have breakfast meetings where you invite 10 potential customers? Do you want to do hyper targeted ABM campaigns, personal videos for your best customers, or maybe do personal outreach or personal branding? Do these things scale until your organization where you're 1,000 people, 500 people, 500,000 people, it doesn't matter? Possibly not, probably not, right? But that's not the point. Initially, you just want to gain traction. You just want to find things that work and then keep reiterating. And sometimes here's a good idea, like the personal videos for your best customers. That was not supposed to be scalable, but we made it scalable. And sometimes you just stumble upon this scalability you can build. And most importantly, once you've found something that works, then you want to push it hard. Push it hard. Keep pushing on it. If you find something that works, things only last for a certain amount of time. This whole lead gen form idea I'm showing you, things have changed a lot since I did that the first time. So it's just a case of saying things change all the time. So when you find something that works, do not let go of it. Second, data is king, but your gut is the queen. Bit of a controversial statement from me. My point is this simple. If you have good enough data, then you will always trust data, and I will always trust data to help me inform my decision. But sometimes there comes a point where data is not enough. Data comes in and says, hey, Casper, I can see that the red and the green button this is the really basic example, I'm sorry for that. But I can see that the red and the green button are performing at basically equally or basically the same level of performance. Then your gut is up to tell you, okay, what do I want to invest in? What do I believe in? That's the simple case. But sometimes it will also be like, hey, I can see our Google Ads is not performing. Is it a general picture of Google Ads, or is it just because we haven't optimized it accordingly? That is your gut feeling that can tell you if you're not doing a proper job, for instance. In our case, that was actually the case, where we had data that supported us that Google Ads was maybe not the thing we should invest in, but actually I was more like, guys, I'm not sure we're doing it well enough. We're not good enough at this yet. So let's take a step back and make sure we're doing this properly. And I was really, really right. So here's the playing field. This is my third point. The playing field is quite simple. What I'm trying to illustrate with this is that 90% of all budgets, I'm not joking, all digital budgets, it might have changed a little bit. It might be, I think it's 85. It's close to 90% approximately. Approximately 90% of all marketing budgets in the digital space, beware, goes to either of these two money grabbers. Facebook with WhatsApp, Messenger, Instagram, so forth, or Google with YouTube, Google Ads, Gmail, whatever. Those two guys grab around 90% of the marketing spend. That's a lot. What is my point with this? Is that, first of all, if you do the same, let's say you invest a lot in Facebook and in Google, that's the only platforms you're operating with. You have what I call lack of diversity, and you have what I also call a high-risk marketing profile. The point of this is saying, let's say tomorrow Facebook decides to raise their prices by threefold. Cool. Then you're like, okay, I'll just move my stuff all to Google. But if you've been on Google in the last 4 years or last 10 years for that matter, or on Facebook, same case, then you are fully aware that those platforms are not getting cheaper. They're not getting cheaper because there are more and more people using them, more and more people know how to use them, and they are tapping these cash cows. They're not stupid. So if suddenly, if that happens, then what do? You can't move to other platforms because you invested so heavily in these platforms. What you want to do is get to a point where you can quickly shift your budget from one channel to another. There's so much untapped potential out there. There's so much, and people are not seeing it for what it is. I have another keynote I did at a conference called Spark last year. I talked about the potential of using Quora and Reddit, and maybe we can do that another session another day. Please feel free to reach out if you want to get my input on those. There's a huge potential. Did you know, just off the top here, did you know that Quora is just as big in terms of traffic as Twitter? You trust me, your social media person or part of your organization typically probably focuses on Twitter exclusively, together with Facebook and LinkedIn maybe. But Quora has a lot of potential. Reddit, almost the same amount of traffic. There's subreddits, there's questions. TikTok, everyone talks about TikTok. No one's doing stuff on TikTok. Very few people doing stuff on TikTok. Yes, they just open up their app platform, but you can do stuff organically. There's so much potential. Pinterest, if I was in B2C e-commerce, God, Lord, I would use Pinterest so much potential. Tumblr, Snapchat, review platforms, G2 Crowd, Capterra. There's a lot of potential and people are not using it. Be aware of that. You can find gold here. Last part. This is actually my most important part of the day. Strategy eats growth hacks for breakfast. If your strategy is wrong, and I know this is super controversial, and a lot of people go, "Hey man, I did this cool growth hack and changed things." By all means, that's great. But if your strategy around your product and your product offering is not good, then you can be the best marketeer or the best growth hacker in the world. It's probably not going to work. One more thing, a lot of people try to book me in all the time and try to talk to me, and they expect to get this silver bullet. There is no silver bullet, guys. There's hard work, and that's the only thing that gets you there. One more thing, growth hacking is a lot more, and having a growth mindset, it's a lot more about process. It's about finding something that works. This, what we call a growth lever. So this works, here we do growth, and then using it, because growth lever is something where you compound growth, compound a good thing over time. So it's a lot more about process, and understanding that it's about process is the first step in becoming a good growth hacker or a good head of growth. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Guides, slides, whatever, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I even have my personal profile here. You can also use a bot. I use demos myself. It's not a problem. It's very cool. And Q&A, that will resort to Twitter and Slack communities if you want to get a hold of me. It's not going to be wrong. Thanks, everyone. It was a pleasure talking to you, everyone. Have a great day. See you soon.